Okay, this guys, I said we need to be careful about these people we follow that claim to be prophets. And what we do is we get caught up in this stuff, and everybody wants to be a prophet. Be careful. They've got prophecy schools now. A prophet is no different to me than, well, they're a man of God. They're a person of God. They are called of God, just as a preacher is, as a pastor is, as a teacher is. And so if you're not called to that, why go seeking after it? Now, this one that I was talking about, I'd seen it. This has been a few years back. As far as I know, he's still living. He has a huge, I checked it out a little bit. He's had this huge Bible college, prophecy college. I don't remember the name of it, and I don't even remember his name, and I really don't care to. But he made this statement that he had gone into the throne of God, God had pulled him up right into the throne of God, and basically he's just talking to God like he was another man. Now there's something bad wrong right there. But in that conversation, though, God begins to tell him some things, and he said, I'm going to give you charge over, I'm going to put Michael the archangel, I'm going to give him into your charge, and basically he's going to be under your supervision. Friend, that's never going to happen. Now, I know that somebody's going to say, well, the Bible says that, do you not know that we'll judge angels? Well, first of all, I think that would be the fallen angels. But even if it's not, that won't be mortal man. That'll be in the future. No mortal man, God's never going to give mortal man charge over his angels. That's not going to happen. And it's heresy. If you see that kind of stuff, you're caught up into it, you need to get out of it. I just put it plain. Get out of it. If you support it, quit supporting it, because you're supporting something that's entirely against God's word. And we'll see here in a little bit that Daniel, when the angel came near to him, we'll read shortly in the next session. We'll start in there right now in verse 18. This is what I'm getting to. And when he had spoken to me, I fell into a deep sleep with my face to the ground. I think Daniel fainted. He passed out. But he touched me and made me to stand up. He said, Behold, I will make known to you what shall be at the latter end of the indignation, for it refers to the time of the end, the appointed time of the end. As for the ram that you saw with the two horns, these are the kings of Media Persia, and the goat is the king of Greece. And the great horn between his eyes is the first king. This horn that was broken in place of which was four others. Four kingdoms shall rise from his nation, but not his power. Isn't that amazing? I got every one of these right. Well, it's amazing what you can learn when you just keep reading. So it's no big thing to figure out who these people are and these kingdoms, because it explains to us right here. We'll see that, like I say, when you look throughout the Bible, just almost every time, there's a couple of rare instances. Almost every time man comes into the presence of an angel, especially when he's got his not cloaked in human form or something, then there's great fear that came on most people. And we'll see Daniel here fainted, and we see similar things in the rest of the scripture a lot of times. So we'll see that all these things happen. Now, Alexander was so severely injured in his last great battle in India that he barely survived. He was out of commission for so long that many people thought he was dead. And his troops began to think he's dead. They didn't believe the reports that he was still living. And we talk about Alexander the Great. His kingdom was split up into four on his death, unexpected death. I mentioned Alexander was so severely injured in his last great battle in India that he barely survived and was out of commission for so long. Most of his troops were convinced that he was dead after an arrow had pierced his lung. Even before entering India, many of his troops were threatening revolt. They had been gone for 5 years and had been in one battle after the other, with occasional R&R. They were also facing larger and larger armies the further east they went. And so, Alexander's army wasn't getting any bigger, essentially. So finally, Alexander agreed to return to Macedonia. And on the way back, they stopped for a time of rest in Babylon after he recovered from those severe injuries. And after a night of heavy partying, he fell ill. His health gradually deteriorated. There were those, his mother Olympias included, who claimed he had been poisoned in a supposed plot conceived by the philosopher and tutor Aristotle and Antipater, fulfilled by his sons Cassander and Iolaus. On his deathbed, barely able to speak, the king handed the signet ring to his loyal commander, Perdiccas. Then he uttered his last words, "to the best." Now, there's still controversy today of what that meant. And there was controversy among his generals at that time when he did that. Some thought maybe he was talking about, okay, here's the ring, the best man win, fight it out, go for it. If I had been that commander that he gave it to, I'd made a strong argument that since he handed it and put it in my hand and he said "to the best," then he was saying that I'm the best, and so the kingdom's mine, and it's mine to rule. But they conferred among themselves, and somewhere decided that they would split the kingdom up into 4 kingdoms. After all, it really was a huge kingdom. The Persian kingdom, it was greatly larger than the Babylonian kingdom. And so each of these kingdoms just became more massive and more massive, and more difficult to rule. And so maybe that's the reason they decided to go ahead and split it up in 4. What was eventually decided was to split it up, and what followed was a long period of history known as the Diadochi, as they did end up fighting for control. The Seleucid Empire was just about to become the last man standing after the Ptolemy kingdom in Egypt, after Antiochus IV Epiphanes had conquered most of Egypt, stripping the kingdom of most of its wealth. Up until that time, first of all, it didn't take long until the first kingdom was gone, because one of the other kingdoms took it and overcame it. Then you was left at 3 for a longer time period, but eventually that kingdom was overtaken, and you were left at these 2 main kingdoms. You had the Ptolemaic kingdom, as I said, in Egypt. The Seleucid kingdom empire was Syria and mostly west of there, over to India. And so here we have Antiochus Epiphanes then. And we'll see more of this in Daniel chapter 11, where it talks about, and that's the reason a lot of people don't spend much time in Daniel chapter 11. The king of the north came against the king of the south. The king of the south came against the king of the north, and back and forth, back and forth. And that's because of these 2 kingdoms here. And finally, after so much of that, Ptolemy is about ready to take it over. Antiochus Epiphanes. Now, he gave himself that title, Epiphanes, which means God manifest. So we'll talk about that. And you may notice some breaks in the video. I'm trying to keep these in short segments and be able to edit them better, so bear with me. Antiochus Epiphanes was just about to put an end. as we're hearing, getting close to the end of Daniel chapter 8. We'll see that all these kingdoms, Antiochus Epiphanes comes to power then. And he is the type of the Antichrist. What happened is that finally, after, as we talked about in Daniel chapter 11, it's back and forth over a long period of time, maybe a couple hundred years or so. The king of the north and the king of the south, which is Egypt and Syria, back and forth, and Jerusalem caught in the middle, usually being controlled by one or the other, whoever controlled that area at the time. Many battles were fought nearby. And so finally, now Rome had come on the scene and defeated, as I mentioned that, I don't know if you caught it or not, but I did mention it, defeated Antiochus IV's father. And Antiochus Antiochus IV was actually taken by Rome as a hostage for a period of time. And but once he came and took over the kingdom, he was let go by Rome, he had just about put an end to Egypt, the Ptolemy kingdom of Egypt. He had ransacked the whole country except for Alexandria, basically. That was his last thing to do, and he's had to, some other things going on in his kingdom that some uprisings I think they had to leave and take care of, and so now he's come back with his army and he's about ready to do away with Ptolemaic kingdom, now empire, once and for all. He's getting ready to take Alexandria, and Alexandria was, like I say, Egypt had been decimated. There was no hope for them really, except to call on Rome. And so now we're getting to see this fourth beast come into the picture. At just the proper time. I say the proper time because here's the sovereignty of God. And here's where Hannibal comes into play. Rome would have been there much sooner on the scene. History would have been much different had it not been for Hannibal. But for years, Rome could not do anything because they had their hands full with Carthage and Hannibal. Hannibal came, we know he marched his elephants and things across the Alps to get into Rome to catch them by surprise, and won a couple small battles there, until finally Rome saw that it's going to take their whole army to stop him. And so they sent their whole army. Usually you had two proconsuls after Rome became a republic. And these proconsuls each had their own army. And so they seldom fought together, but this time they did. When they met Hannibal at Cannae, Hannibal destroyed both those armies together. In other words, it's the whole Roman army. A few escaped, and it's many of been still debate goes on today why Hannibal did not end up taking Rome with that kind of defeat that he handed them. Well, he'd lost a lot of men himself, and I kind of lean toward the thing that some have said that Carthage did not send him the troops, the reinforcements they needed to finish the job. And so, at any rate, here I see God's sovereignty, holding Rome back until the proper time. God's timing is going to be right on time. I will conclude the rest of Daniel chapter 8 in the next video, which will be part 5 of Daniel chapter 8.